Sì, si vede bene.
Experiments is pretty interesting because many of us probably have a bottle at home right now. Dr. Mark Civic is the CEO of Fabric and Home Care at Procter & Gamble. You guys make Tide. Good morning. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
So tell us, how do astronauts clean their clothes right now?
Unfortunately, astronauts actually do not clean their clothes right now, and this resupply mission will actually supply clothing for them, and sometimes they have to wear their clothing up to 4 days in advance, and you can imagine that's pretty gross. So for long-term deep space missions, NASA has partnered with Tide to develop the first detergent for space use for long flight missions because it becomes cost prohibitive to send up so much clothing for a long-term flight.
Yeah, so then how will the experiment work? Is that the detergent that they would
try?
try?
This is exactly the sample of the detergent that's going to fly this morning. And as the consumer expects performance and cleaning from Tide, the astronauts will as well. And unfortunately, astronauts can't go around the store to get a new bottle of Tide when it runs out. So our objective here is in this experiment to understand stability of Tide and Tide Infinity specifically for this experiment. And then we want to learn about the ingredients and their stability through microgravity and radiation for long-term flight duration.
And I would guess that if laundry is being done on the space station, it would use less water, right? Because that's a difficult resource up there. Would that mean that what we learn from this experiment could mean less water usage for us here on Earth?
That's what we plan to learn. We're using International Space Station as a surrogate for off-flight, off-planet missions. And from there, we want to learn about constraint environments for developing the next best Tide for the consumer around the globe, not just in space, but for situations in the world where resources are constrained. Water usage is constrained, and so is energy. If we can get the consumer to use Tide Infinity in the future for future cleaning at lower wash temperatures, that'll help society in general.
5 minuti e 20 secondi
Thank you.
la
But it's not
partenza.
just science that's flying to the space station. We, of course, send supplies like food to the crew, and they'll be getting some holiday treats on this flight. Things like roasted turkey, spicy green beans, smoked seafood, and shellfish, and fruitcake to help them celebrate the holidays. They'll also be getting some presents. All right, we are now T-minus 5 minutes and counting. Let's bring back Andy and Joshua to walk us through the final moments of the countdown. Guys?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. The SpaceX team is working no significant issues right now. We're continuing to monitor weather, although it is trending more and more towards green as we march towards T0. The range is also standing by to support. At this point, RP1 fuel is completely loaded on both stages. Liquid oxygen loading is currently underway and should complete around the T-minus 2 minute mark. We're also loading helium gas into both stages. Falcon 9 uses helium as a pressurant to backfill the propellant tanks, as LOX and RP1 are consumed by the Merlin engines during ascent. Helium load began before the broadcast went live, and we'll continue to top that off as well until about a minute and a half before launch.
Andy mentioned that liquid oxygen being loaded. It's super chilled liquid oxygen, and to make sure the engine startup goes well, they perform engine chill. This began at T-minus 7 minutes, and a small amount of that LOX is flowed through the Merlin engine's turbo pumps to avoid thermal shock to that system, to allow the full flow of super chilled liquid oxygen when the clock strikes 0. Dragon also began its startup sequence at T-minus 35 minutes when it coordinated timing with Falcon 9. It's currently undergoing vehicle health checks, with the next big step happening just a moment ago when Dragon transitioned to internal power.
What we're seeing on screen right now, the clamp arms just underneath the Dragon have begun to open up, and they should be completing fully open right now. And the strong back, which is the truss structure right next to Falcon 9, is beginning to recline away to its pre-launch position, about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. It will continue to recline all the way back as we reach T0 to provide clearance for the vehicle to lift off.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
In these last few minutes, Falcon 9 is performing final health checks on its primary communications, avionics, and propulsion systems in preparation for flight. We also may hear callouts that the engines are sufficiently chilled as we get closer to liftoff.
The checkouts of the second stage thrust vector control actuators should begin right about T minus 2 minutes 30 seconds. That's referred to as the engine wiggle test, a fairly self-explanatory name. This is where SpaceX will move the thrust nozzles slightly to make sure the guidance hardware is
2 minuti e 30 al decollo.
go for flight. SpaceX will do the exact same checkouts on the first stage engines just seconds before ignition. This is all still on track, weather being go now for liftoff scheduled for 5:07:08 Eastern Time this morning as we track towards the space station with rendezvous and docking scheduled for tomorrow morning. Space station now tracking over Central Europe and will be there with this mission for about a month.
So at this point, we are wrapping up liquid oxygen loading. Once that is done, that is all of the propellant that will be loading onto the vehicles. And that is the call out right there. So all propellants are loaded onto the vehicle.
Dragon is an auto idle.
We're starting to have some white clouds building around the vehicle. That is condensed liquid oxygen. As that super chilled liquid oxygen reaches the warmer ambient air temperatures of Florida, it'll start to form those clouds. Normal and expected for us at this stage in the countdown.
Ground gas close out.
Things continue to go smoothly as we march towards T0.
At T minus 1 minute, we'll get the Dragon transitioned to internal power call. The Falcon 9 computers will enter startup mode and begin final pre-launch checks, guiding the rocket through the last seconds before liftoff.
Beh, sto rumore è il vento.
Falcon 9's in startup.
55
Dragon is in
secondi.
countdown.
So there are a couple great callouts. Both stages are now pressurizing for launch. Range remains go. The weather did clear earlier and has remained green. So all
Falcon 9, CRS-24, go for launch.
That's the launch director calling go for launch. We'll get an all systems go here in just a few seconds, and then we'll listen into the rest of the count.
Bene. 30 secondi.
30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds.
10 secondi.
10,
9,
9,
8,
8,
7,
7,
6, 5, 4,
5,
3,
4,
2,
2,
1, 0. Vai.
0. Ignition.
Liftoff. Cargo Dragon soars with the final supply run in 2021 for the astronauts aboard the International Space Station.
Poco casino, eh. Gratta solo un po'.
Stage 1 chamber pressure is nominal.
Tra qualche secondo, un minuto, arriviamo alla massima pressione sopra, distesa su tutto il razzo.
T plus 40 seconds into flight, Falcon 9 and Dragon
Power
have cleared the
telemetry
tower. You
nominal.
can see them passing through the cloud layers right now. Next up, in just a few seconds here, is Max Q. This is where the vehicle will experience the highest amount of aerodynamic pressures.
Boom sonico a 1200 km/h. Massima pressione, sopra, distesa su tutto il razzo. Parte ora.
Max Q.
And there's the call out for Max Q. Through that period of high pressure on the vehicle, the engines on the first stage are now throttling back up as we continue to make our journey to orbit. Coming up in about a minute are 3 events in rapid succession. First up is main engine cutoff, also known as MECO,
Vac engine chill has
followed by
started.
stage separation, and then second engine start, also known as SES-1. Main engine cutoff is where all 9 engines on the first stage will shut off in preparation for the second event, stage separation. During stage separation, the first and second stages will separate from one another. The first stage makes its way back to the drone ship for a landing attempt, and the second stage will ignite its Merlin vacuum engine and continue to boost Dragon to low Earth orbit.
Ma bisogna... sono delle... come possiamo dire? Dei portare la roba, di rifornimento, oh guarda, il colore blu, il kerosene, ehm, le supplies, quindi del rifornimento alla stazione spaziale che stanno a 200, no, 400 km, quindi sì, ok, ok, abbiamo avuto la separazione del booster, quindi adesso se mostrano la mappa, ok, ok, a sinistra abbiamo lo stage 1 che deve fare il rientro e atterrare sopra un landing pad.
Resupply mission to the International Space Station for NASA. This is SpaceX's 31st mission for 2021 and the 5th Dragon flight to the International Space Station this year. Couple of views
Ventunesimo.
on the screen. The right-hand side of your screen is a view of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. The Dragon capsule carrying
Poi
all
switch
the
on
wonderful
le videocamere a
coding
caso,
traits and
lasciamo perdere.
science is on the opposite end of that engine. Again, that is continuing to run smoothly as it makes its way to orbit. On the left-hand side of the screen is
Come notate
the third stage.
lo
You'll
stage a
notice some
sinistra, lo stage 1 a sinistra.
honeycomb-like structures. There's
Zitti un attimo ragazzi. Stage a sinistra continua a salire, 123 km. Ora dovrebbe iniziare a scendere perché la velocità sta scendendo piano piano, quindi sì. Tra poco inizierà a scendere. È una specie di orbita ellittica. Mini! Non è orbita assolutamente niente perché non è uscita ancora dall'attrazione della Terra, ma... Parcheggiato nell'Oceano Atlantico. Deve atterrare nell'Oceano Atlantico. Intanto lo stage 2 ha raggiunto i 10.000 km/h.
for our mission today is going to be the first stage entry burn. It's going to be the first of 2 burns. In order to make its way back to our drone ship, the first stage has to execute these 2 burns. The first, again, is the entry burn.
È vero che hanno detto che questo booster a sinistra è il primo che cambiano, cioè la seconda volta che lo cambiano quest'anno. E ne hanno fatti di voli. Fantastico. Sembra che poi nella live non si veda nulla a sinistra, è troppo buio. No, si vede.
Also heading horizontally away from the launch pad in what we call a gravity turn.
Stage 1 FTS is safe.
Things continue to go smoothly for both the first and second stages. Again, the first stage entry burn.
Ok, sta per accendere
Start in about 10
il
seconds.
boost di sinistra, sta per accendere il motore per evitare di spiattellarsi dentro l'Oceano Atlantico, ma perché sta accelerando infatti. Rallenterà in mezzo secondo.
And
La motora ha una spinta della Madonna.
Merlin engines have reignited their engines and are now currently slowing down the first stage. This burn is expected to last about 30 seconds. You can see the velocity on the
Sono curioso
bottom
perché
side of the screen. We're starting to decrease
lo stage 2 è già a 195 km/h e non hanno ancora spento il motore. No? Ok, hanno spento a sinistra, 4600. Prende velocità però,
Great
30
news.
km.
That is burn 1 of 2 complete. The Falcon
Allora.
9 first stage is also equipped with 4 landing legs made of state-of-the-art carbon fiber with aluminum.
Non saprei quando
They're
rientrerà,
placed around the base of the rocket
quando
and
finirà,
deployed
perché se la
just
stazione
prior to
spaziale sta a
landing.
400 km dovrebbe averlo già fatto.
So we are about 60 seconds away from
Curiosità.
landing the vehicle, and we're traveling a significant velocity right now, and this really puts into perspective the deceleration that the first stage will experience. In less than the span of a minute, we'll reduce from twice the speed of a jet all the way down to 0 as the rocket lands.
Stage 1 is transonic.
Lo stage 1 sta
The first stage
6 km,
is
scende molto
expected to start
velocemente.
here in about 20
Ecco,
seconds,
inizia a morire.
for about 25
Mi piace come
seconds.
prende meglio.
During the duration of
Prende,
the
ok,
burn, we are
423
listening for the
km.
call out
Sta a
for
423 km
which
la
stands
stazione
for
spaziale.
second
Mi piace come prende meglio quando sta
vacuum
a
engine that
100
is
km, 130 km dalla superficie. Poi prende peggio quando entra nel Mediterraneo, nell'Oceano Atlantico. Cosa fantastica. Un chilometro. Sta per atterrare.
Stage 2 FTS is safe.
Lag schifoso, guardate lì. Ecco. Niente, siamo persi l'atterraggio. Boh, ci siamo persi l'atterraggio per forza. E niente, boh. Avranno la conferma visiva, lo dicono adesso.
Invac shutdown. Stage 1 landing is confirmed.
Ok, hanno confermato l'atterraggio. Grazie per aver mostrato la mappa. Oh, eccolo qua.
There it is. So this is the first landing for this particular booster, but the 100th successful landing for an orbital class
Madonna,
rocket.
100.
What a way to end off the
Centesimo.
year. We also heard that the second engine
Nell'Oceano Atlantico prende da schifo. Mamma mia, che bella cosa. Poi però a 130 km dalla superficie proprio. È anche buono perché è più vicino ai satellitos, ma non è che ha tanto senso.
Expected loss of signal, Cape. Acquisition signal, Newfoundland.
Allora, tra poco facciamo il deploy. Ah, vedi che hanno già finito. 198 ho detto che lo facciamo nell'orbita ellittica. Adesso inizieranno a salire i chilometri fino a agganciarlo dall'altra parte. Sì, infatti. Guardate che giro che deve fare. Un casino.
And I am getting confirmation that we do indeed have a good orbit. So the second stage is going to be coasting for a few minutes here. This is a view of the unpressurized cargo section of the Dragon. The second stage right now is making some small adjustments during the coast phase prior to separation. We should also have video of Dragon separating from the top of the second stage itself. Should give us a nice view of that. The view we just saw of the unpressurized cargo section as Dragon will slowly depart away from the second stage. Dragon is going to be joining the Crew 3 vehicle Endurance that is currently attached to the International Space Station.
Eccolo là.
And as always,
199 km. Salgono e la velocità dovrebbe... No, dovrebbe prendere più velocità, però più avanti, non adesso. Adesso diminuisce.
Speaking of cargo, today we'll be delivering, as part of today's mission, we'll be delivering more than 6,500 pounds of science, research, crew supplies, and vehicle hardware to the orbit.
Madonna, 605 mila... cosa sono i pounds? Ah, 6.500 libbre di scienza. Ma che cos'è? Portano il cibo e danno la scienza, vabbè. La scienza di mangiare. Molto interessante.
Again, this is a cargo mission, so there is no crew aboard the Dragon as part of today's mission. And in fact, we will modify the vehicles slightly for these types of missions. So there are no seats, there are no life support systems. This saves weight. It also frees up some space for more cargo, and it also allows us to refurbish the Dragon a little bit quicker once it splashes back down to Earth in about a month.
Sì, una cosa bella, che se io faccio una live e metto i sottotitoli in tempo reale, fanno schifo. Cioè, non lo so io. Adesso stacca.
Loss of signal, Bermuda.
E che vabbè, fa
Stage
schifo.
separation confirmed. For Dragon.
Ah, expect... Ah no, hanno sbagliato. Hanno detto... Potremmo aver perso il segnale.
looking at the
No, invece no, è ritardati loro.
cargo section.
Lasciamo
The
perdere.
Dragon has about a day before it makes its way and to
Madonna,
International
un
Space
giorno.
Station and docks.
Ah, sì, sì.
Coming up is nose cone opening sequence. But that is going to do it for me here in Hawthorne. I'm going to hand it over to
Sono 12 minuti.
Shaniqua in Houston.
Tutta sta roba in 12 minuti. No, sta roba.
Thanks, Andy. And everything is still going well back here in Mission Control Houston. And right after Dragon separated, it began a series of automatic checkouts, including small firings of the Draco maneuvers.
Che voce.
The next milestone is nose cone deploy. The nose cone protects the docking hardware and rendezvous tracking elements of the top of Dragon during ascent. The nose cone deploy uncovers the 4 forward bulkhead thrusters, which Dragon will use for its major burn maneuvers to catch up with the space station. Once open, the nose cone will stay in that position until the very end of its mission, closing prior to re-entry to provide some additional protection to that same hardware during re-entry.
Io non ho capito niente.
So right now we're waiting to hear confirmation that the nose cone is fully deployed. And after confirmation, we'll have one of the program managers here join me on console. Join me virtually, sorry.
Join me virtually. Adesso non so quanto streameranno così. Tanto adesso c'è scritto che passa un giorno. Hanno detto che passa un giorno. Quindi. Dobbiamo stare qui a studiare i movimenti.
You're currently seeing live views of the International Space Station Flight Control Room. You currently see Flight Director Adi Boulos standing as we wait for that final confirmation of nose cone deploy.
Ok, deploy. Ma come? L'abbiamo visto. Vabbè, dobbiamo sentire un beep. Switchano, sbagliano. Mamma mia. Mamma mia. Switchano le scene e sbagliano pure. Mamma mia, che cose geniali. Oh, ma questo non lo possono buttare giù, scusa. No.
Now joining me on the phone is manager of the International Space Station Transportation Integration Office, Phil Dempsey. Hi, Phil. Can you outline some of the major activities for the crew with CRS-24?
Sure, thanks, Shaniqua. First of all, let me just say, it's a great
È un manager on the phone.
watching through the weather and managed to get a shot through, and great to see Dragon catch up tomorrow. This mission enables well over 500 hours of research, some of which actually has to be completed before the vehicle undocks again in about 30 days, so the samples can be returned to investigators. As always, research is a key activity during this mission. We've also got the transfer of 2 external payloads, SCP-H7 and H8, from the Dragon trunk to their locations on ISS. And then there's work to prepare for spacewalks planned later in the increment in the coming months. There's several maintenance activities with hardware showing up on this mission. And then we have a software transition plan. So, overall, a lot really going on during the 30 days or so that this CRS-24 is on to enable all of this work.
That's awesome. Thank you, Phil. And of course, these resupply missions and you deliver science, as you mentioned, hardware and other cargo to the station.
Ma mi dà fastidio quando dicono deliver science.
To the station. How important are they for the astronauts? You said over 500 research activities and experiments. How important is that for us to do on the International Space Station?
Yeah, so these missions are absolutely critical. The International Space Station is operating for the purpose of doing research and technology demonstration. So, we've got
lavorano
different
per
experiments going up on this.
Ricerche tecnologiche. Wow.
That enables are key to what the astronauts are there for in the first place. You know, and what's unique about these SpaceX missions is that we get the return science back down in about a month. So operation of these experiments around this full mission timeline is critical.
Cioè devono, in un mese,
addition, we've got hardware going up.
devono far ritornare tutta la scienza che gli hanno tirato adesso. Cioè che li hanno portato lì, devono portarla a casa in un mese. Ma che cosa? Boh. Un bel panorama.
Hardware for our EMUs, which are used for the spacewalks that we've got. But then there's also updated supplies for the crew. Of course, you know, Christmas dinner, hopefully, and some Christmas presents for the crew, which is always a treat for them to get on these types of missions. So absolutely all of this is critical to keep the crew occupied doing what they're there for in the first place.
Thanks, Phil. And we did have confirmation currently that the nose cone is deploying. It is opening currently, and I will confirm with you all when it is fully open. As always, Phil, it's a busy time aboard the International Space Station with cargo vehicles and crews coming and going. And, you know, like you mentioned, the upgraded equipment, how complex will the next few months be for the International Space Station program and the global partnership?
So, you know, we're closing out what's been actually a really great, really busy year, and next year looks to be no different. You know, in fact, it starts really tomorrow with our Russian partners following this launch with the undock of module. It's really cleanup from them installing their node module on the Russian segment. You know, there are 3 Russian spacewalks planned for late January. We've got some U.S. spacewalks in February-March timeframe. And that's to get ready for the next set of upgraded solar arrays coming later in the year. We've also got another cargo resupply mission, our first U.S. private astronaut mission coming up, and additional resupply missions, and then we get back into the crew cycle launches on the Russian and the U.S. side both. So it's actually very busy across the space station program with our international commercial partners both. So while it is complex, as you said, Shanique, well, we've got outstanding teams across the program who do this all the time. They do it very well. So, you know, I see it as really fitting that our teams close out the year with a launch that get 2022 off and running.
That's right. And thanks again, Phil, for joining us. And happy holidays. Back here.
Happy holidays. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room, flight controllers are monitoring the systems on the station itself ahead of Dragon's arrival Wednesday morning. Once Dragon crosses that approachable zone, which is that mythical sphere around the station, flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston will begin joint operations with the SpaceX teams in Hawthorne, California. NASA astronauts Rasha Chari and Tom Marshburn will be monitoring the approach and arrival of Dragon with a planned docking Wednesday morning at 3:30 a.m. Central Time, 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Once Cargo Dragon is docked to the station, Chari and Marshburn will begin hatch operations to open the hatches between the International Space Station and Cargo Dragon.
Perfetto.
And with that, we have final confirmation that the nose cone is open. So with that, everything is still on track on the International Space Station side. So that'll do it for us here in Mission Control Houston. Happy holidays. And now heading over to Kennedy. Megan?
And that's going to wrap up our launch coverage of SpaceX's 24th commercial resupply services mission. Cargo Dragon, as you heard her say, is on course to dock to the International Space Station at about 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow. We will have live coverage here on NASA TV.
4:40 a.m.
In the meantime, you can learn even more about the mission on nasa.gov/commercial resupply. Thank you for joining us. We leave you with a replay of the launch. Happy holidays.
Oh, vaffanculo, non voglio il replay.
T-minus 15.
Perché mettono il replay alla fine? Vabbè. Lasciamo perdere.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Liftoff. Cargo Dragon soars with the final supply run of 2021 to the astronauts aboard the International Space Station.
Bello. Boh. Mi è piaciuto, è durata 32 minuti la live fino adesso. Grazie per il logo della NASA, fantastico. Grazie mille. Comunque, un lancio, cioè, a 12 minuti è praticamente pronto, ma che... Vabbè, una cosa fantastica, 12 minuti ci ha impiegato, solo ed esclusivamente 12 minuti. Beh, 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 poteva essere pure peggio. Comunque, hanno terminato la live. No, hanno fatta bene, hanno fatta bene, hanno fatta bene. Io direi che se domani l'orario non è il loro, cioè, se domani l'orario non è il loro, non è alle 4:30 di mattina, sto cercando di guardare a che ora è, ma non me lo dicono un attimo. Lo sto leggendo. Beh, allora, e per domani alle 10:30, quindi noi ci risentiamo domani per le 10:30. Alla prossima.